After 6 races, jet-setting all over Europe and North America, it is time to set down at our season finale. Good evening and welcome to the wonderful Sebring International Raceway for Race 7 and the season finale of the Platinum Pilot Series. My name is Taylor Mills, alongside me is Amity Pulsatrix, and we'll be live from Lights to Flag here on ABN. Nestled between Lakes Jackson and Iztoppoga, deep in central Florida, on the site of an old World War II airfield, lies a strip of tarmac and concrete that is pure racetrack royalty. Hosted the 12 Hours since 1952, Sebring now forms the battleground for the final race of the Platinum Pilot Series. 17 turns, 10 to the right and 7 to the left, snaking through the connecting roads, taxiways, and runways that made up the Hendricks Army Airfield to form a circuit that is revered by drivers and fans alike. Respect the bumps is a phrase that is so often uttered in reference to the treacherous high-speed final corner of Sunset Bend, and this track calls for a setup compromise between a stable platform on the tarmac infield and one that can handle the craters that make up the old concrete runway. It will be the driver that shows the circuit the respect she deserves that will come out on top tonight, as anyone who tries to push her limits could find themselves the wrong way looking at a tyre barrier. So, with both championships wrapped up as of last race, it is gloves off for one final 90-minute sprint around one of the world's greatest racetracks. So, Amity, what are you expecting to see here tonight?
I'm expecting to see everybody on track having a lot of fun. We already have the 2 championships locked in. Miguel Almeida being able to lock in the GT3 championship, and nope, not Thomas Burling, right? Or is it?
No, not at all.
I can't remember who the LMP2...
Luke Smith.
Luke Smith, right. Yeah, Luke Smith locking in the LMP2 championship. My bad. But with those championships locked in now, all you really have left to fight for is bragging rights amongst the rest of the pack in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. So as a result, I think we're gonna see probably 2 different types of people, 2 different types of drivers. We're going to see the drivers who are just kind of laid back and just out here to have fun. And we're going to see drivers who are going breakneck out of control because, like, super quick and super aggressive because they got nothing to lose. But here at Sebring, it is a very tight balance in terms of what driving style you really want to do and how close to the edge you can drive, because the bumps are going to be so unforgiving for these cars.
Yeah, and especially with the changes that have been made to the LMP2 for the start of season 1 of 2025 in iRacing. Of course, we had that big seasonal update it was only last week. It's the reason that this race had to be delayed for an entire week. But we are back, and we are here with a very different LMP2, one with a lot less downforce, locks to the Le Mans Daytona aero package now. A lot less power. Well, I say a lot less power. A chunk of power has been taken out of these cars, as well as a brand new tire model as well, that gives us a little bit of a taste for what's to come as the tire model does progress here on iRacing. It's one that gives up a lot less pace to temperature, one that stays a lot more stable over the course of a stint, one that you can really extract some pace out of as the fuel starts to burn off. So it's something that I think is going to save a lot of our drivers tonight, because they're not going to have to do as much tire management as they otherwise would have. It's been a very interesting experience, to say the least, getting used to how these new tires handle. Of course, it has broken the GTP class, but has really brought the LMP2 a lot closer to where it is in real life. Of course, we are still a little bit faster than real life race times around here, but the car itself is in a much, much more realistic spot than it was only 2 short weeks ago.
As we get prepared for qualifying, soon to start in about 10 minutes or so. We're going to take a look at Maxime Dumoulin and see some of the other drivers who are just finishing up their practice. Maxime Dumoulin in the McLaren And we were seeing earlier Thomas Burling as well, taking some practice laps around track. Maxime Dumoulin currently sitting 4th on the standings in practice, with Diogo Teodoro actually topping the leaderboard on the practice charts, at least for GT3, ahead of Miguel Almeida. And Luke Tunison, unlucky Luke, is actually on the top of the grid for LMP2, at least in terms of practice. Top of the leaderboard for practice lap times. And Alex Miller just behind in Taylor Mills Racing.
Yeah, Luke Tunison, of course, the race winner last time out at Indy, the first new race winner in LMP2. Of course, we did see that a couple of times for the GT3 class. Miguel Almeida missed out on a couple of victories, but with no Luke Smith here tonight, at least so far, I haven't seen him join the lobby whilst we've been sat here. Maybe it'll mean we'll get another brand new race winner in LMP2. The times are very tight at the top of the standings, with the NGC by Rubis gas car only 0.7 of a second off your top time right now. Of course, that is time that can be made up in the race. There's a lot of traffic management to do here, and of course it's great to see it's only his second race in the season, no bias of course. Alex Miller up there in 2nd place, only a 10th off the top time. But we do have a brand new debutante in this series as we come into the final round. Alex even got the bright blue LED as this practice session continues on into the night. I believe we have brought in Christoph Zander making his debut for Writer Engineering Esports Pink. So another new face out here on the grid that we don't know much or anything about. Just waiting to see exactly what he's capable of as we start to look towards season 2 of this championship, which is confirmed to be happening. We'll have further details to share, hopefully at some point, but not quite yet. Unfortunately, we are just going to have to sit and wait for that one now. But season 2 of the Platinum Pilot Series is in the works.
It'll be really exciting to hopefully work on the Platinum Endurance Championship Series throughout 2025, and hopefully once again for the Pilot Series. Platinum has consistently had some of the most incredibly skilled grids that I've ever done commentary or even done production for, and every single race has been an absolute joy to a joy to watch. Always something happening on track, and even when there isn't a whole lot happening, there's still some things to discuss, like what types of strategy some drivers are using versus others, among other things. So I would be inclined to say, as a commentator, I would consider this particular series a success with the Platinum eGP Pilot Series, and hope it comes back again next year in 2025.
Yeah, really looking forward to seeing how this championship develops over the next couple of months or so as we enter season 2. Hopefully some slightly bigger grids for next time. It's always good to see sports cars going around, especially a track like Sebring. Of course, we were here a few months ago for the Platinum Endurance. I think it was 10 hours of Sebring. It's been a very long time since then. And I think we had a touch of weather to contend with there as well, which is always nice. But hopefully we won't have to deal with it being as dark as it is now. It makes it very difficult to see those gorgeous liveries out there on track as we are following Philip's best. He comes under the bridge, and the reflection of the lights of the bridge just illuminating that beautiful white, orange and black Ford Mustang GT3. No bias, definitely not an overly zealous Ford fan. Me, every time I see that dashboard, it makes me giggle, because I know for a fact that whoever went, you know what, we could put something around the gear number, and what we should actually put around it is a Ford oval, and you know that they are so proud of themselves for coming up with that, because it doesn't look great, but everyone talks about it every time they see it. Let me get a nice close-up view of the dashboard, and it looks so funky without the nice fancy Ford writing in the middle of it. But if that was my idea, I'd be proud of that one too.
Absolutely. The Ford Mustang, one of my personal favorite GT3s, not necessarily to drive, but certainly to watch go around. It's got a beautiful V8 sound coming out of the front end of this car, piped to the back through the exhaust system. perfectly tuned to make this thing sing throughout the night. I love this car so much, and especially with the new V8 supercars that just came out with the recent iRacing update. Man, life's good for American V8s.
I was going to say, those are Australian V8s, but anyone who loves V8 growls, grumbles, and screams is absolutely eating right now with what's out there on the service. Ford Mustang GT3, I almost said Holden, the Chevy Camaro and Mustang as supercars, the Cadillac V-Series that are, we're eating good right now. And obviously there's some different sounds out there as well that are equally as nice as we just had the Ferrari 499P finally make its debut on the surface. And it brings back those hybrid regen noises that I personally have missed so much from driving the Audi R18, and it was one of the biggest things that I wanted iRacing to get right with that car, and the sound department absolutely nailed it, as they have with how each and every one of these cars sounds. That I think as every new car comes out, I always say the quality, or the actual quality of the cars, realism is left to be debated, but the quality of the cars is constantly improving. I think the Ferrari 499P, certainly from off-board, is one of the closest sounding to its real-life counterparts than I think anything else that's been made in the sim. We are getting a deep sound update at some point in the future. Not holding our breath on that one. We've got a long way to go before we even think about getting that one, but just watching the small steps they're making before the big leap gives me a lot of faith in exactly how the sim is going to develop over the next couple of years or so.
Absolutely. We know how iRacing operates at this point. It's ready when it's ready. So I'll be excited to hear the new audio and all that stuff. As an audiophile myself, I'll be very excited to hear how their changes to the audio system will sound once they're implemented, as we take a look at Nelson Clemente driving around in the number 42 LMP2 Dallara. You might notice there's no NSXs on track either. I'm not exactly sure if it's... I don't think it's necessarily a choice where, like, the series has decided you can't drive those cars because it wasn't available at the start of the season. But we do know that there is, if you do change your car mid-season, you get a points reset. So at this point in the season, I don't think people are really excited to remove all of the work they've done throughout just to drive a new car. But the NSX is still there. Another new car that was added to the game, or sim, or whatever you want to call it.
The service, there you go. The
service, there.
Yeah, another V6 to the collection.
I know some people get really upset when you call iRacing a game, but I mean, it's
a game.
It's a game.
Yeah, it's a game.
It's fun.
It's not. Yeah, and it's not offensive to call it a game. It's just a very, 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 very expensive game.
Very expensive, very hardcore, unforgiving, very and more expensive in not just the subscription and all the downloadable content you can license. You don't even necessarily own them, but also in terms of the equipment you probably need in order to get actually quick on this game. Granted, there are some people who are ridiculously quick on controller or even mouse and keyboard. I've seen somebody go nuts with those, but I've also seen people go nuts with a mouse and keyboard on live for speed, so they might have already had the training. Right. But regardless, genuinely, it's a very expensive hobby to get into, but at the end of the day, it is a video game. As we now have the session over and transitioning over into qualifying.
Yeah, practice comes to a close here at Sebring International as we move on to the qualifying session for the final 90-minute race of the championship. It will be 4 total timed laps if you can get them in the space of 10 minutes. It might be a little bit tight for the GT3s. They may not be able to pull off the same sort of strategy that they have done in other races of resetting to the pit lane to get a fresh set of tires for the final run, as we do have a car out on track already. Just trying to figure out who that is. Looking down my list, there you go, Jeremy DeBova for Vortex Bike. I can see him back out there on the circuit, but just a note of carryover from practice. Your fast drivers were looking to be Luke Tennyson, and I think it was where is he now? I've lost him in the list. This is what happens when you go between sessions and all of the standings get completely mixed up. Diogo Teodoro, who was a good chunk of time in front of series champion Miguel Almeida, so we'll see if he can hold on to that for now. Here, though, is your series debutant of Christoph Zander for Writer Engineering Esports Pink, with those stunning neon pink purple headlights in the door of that car. And instantly the song Sedona by Houndmouth comes to mind. I love that song.
The pink auxiliary lights lining the door frame, and driving a Pfaff McLaren livery, actually. Base, the Canadian boys out in Toronto.
Well, it's certainly interesting considering that Pfaff have officially announced their partnership with Lamborghini for next season in IMSA, which I'm excited for.
Wait, they're switching again?
Yeah. They're going to Lamborghini. I think they had a bit of a falling out with McLaren over the course of the year. It was pretty obvious that they were switching over when they sold their car. But yeah, they'll be taking over the running of Lamborghini from Iron Lynx, who, the partnership between Lamborghini and Iron Lynx sort of broke down in the later half of this racing season. Of course, we saw them still out there testing on track at Daytona, but a lot of internal politics, disagreements between the two organizations meant Iron Lynx depart for Mercedes and their GT3 program, and Lamborghini are left scrambling to find someone to run the SC63 in IMSA next season. As Maxime Dumoulin just doing a little bit of weaving down the back straights, trying to get a little bit of temperature into the tires of that McLaren 720S GT3, right to the inside of this corner, hug those lights on the inside, all the way out to the barrier, as wide as he can go, back over to the right-hand side of the track to start his first flying lap here at Sebring. As you come under that bridge, take a look up at those flags that will tell you which direction the wind is going to be blowing. Took that car very nicely to the inside of turn one as Dumoulin blasts down through two, flicks it left into three, hook that curb, hug it on the inside, get maximum rotation. Same again with this one, stay tight to it on exit, get the straightest exit you can, punch your car out onto Big Bend as you fly down towards the hairpin. A very bumpy braking zone down here, so brake a little bit earlier than you might otherwise expect. Feed the car in to the right, use all that curve on the inside if you can, maybe even the sand for a little bit of rotation as Dumoulin continues through the Fangio chicane, blends to the right, blends to the left, picking your braking point out in the dark. Very difficult here as he goes hard on the brakes yet again, turns in nice and early, V's that corner off beautifully, and then through the very fast, very bumpy, very unstable double left-hander, beats it back to the right for the braking zone of Tower, to the inside, use the camber down there, there's plenty of it, out to that curb, don't get on the sand, that's going to be a 1x and your lap is going to be over. Plenty of curb usage down here that you can have through turns 14 and down into 15, hard on the brakes, using the curb on the inside, flick it through the left, hard on the brakes again, and then out onto the concrete runway on the way down towards Sunset. Look at all those bumps and cracks in the surface. This is a track that hasn't been repaved in a very, very long time. Sunset Bend being the only corner left in Maxime Dumoulin's way. It's a nice wide entry. The bumps helping send you out wider. There's even more on the inside of the corner as Dumoulin struggles to get it down to the inside. A brand new concreted section of the track on the outside there. No grass left as Dumoulin brings it to the line. Now what's it going to be for the Simitok Sensation, the McLaren driver? It's going to be provisional pole position by half a second. That is a good start to the session for Dumoulin.
That was an incredible lap from Maxime Dumoulin. You just saw how tidy every single corner was. When those laps look as slow as Maxime's do, it usually means they're actually very quick. If your car's going sideways and doing all the exciting stuff that makes them look fast, you tend to be losing a lot of time. So Maxime, very tidy, very clean lap, keeping all four corners of the car in contact with the ground, keeping them level, keeping them flat, keeping them even with the amount of grip each tire has, and that really results in a fantastic time for Maxime Dumoulin currently.
Turnison, Clemente, and Isenberg currently at the top of the LMP2 standings, covered by 2.7 seconds as Turnison looks to back up that race win from last time out at Indianapolis Road Course. Dumoulin, Teodoro, Spess at the top of the GT3 standings as the cars are coming around to finish a few more flying laps. Always a fast and furious qualifying session, not only here at Sebring but here in the PPS, as you only have 4 laps and 10 minutes to get your lap times in. Sebastian Isenberg steals that 3rd place spot, as actually, as soon as I say that, Alex Miller jumps up into P3 with a 1 minute 49.5, so still about 0.7 of a second off your current pole sitter of Luke Turnison, but a very solid lap from the TMR driver.
And as we talked about, Luke Turnison now coming across the final corner to finish the 2nd lap. Comes across the finish line, and that is an improvement, a 1:48.22. That is almost a full second ahead of Nelson Clemente. That is a huge gap. Tremendous gap, especially when the lap is about a minute 50. That's pretty extreme.
We did wonder how the updates to the LMP2s would affect sort of the pace split of the field. I think, well, realistically, we're only expecting a tire update to these cars, and we had a lot more than that. It was very much a big surprise for the entire LMP2 community. So we're just following Alex Dieter, for Slippers Racing Team on his lap. Not setting a time yet, looking to get one in the latter stages of the session, but yeah, we knew the tire model change would shake up the order a little bit, but with the added aero and power changes as well, it's meant this is a completely different car to drive, and it's going to play to different drivers' strengths and weaknesses. And one driver that really seems to have taken a positive impact from these changes is Luke Turnison, who is looking absolutely dominant at the front of the field right now. Almost a touch on the barrier for Alex Dieter. I don't know if that would have been a car contact 0x. We'll see as he comes across the start-finish line. That lap is going to count, and he's going to put that car 7th on the rolling grid for the final race of the season. A great lap from Dieter.
Yeah, 1:50.50 was the time there being set. Almost thrown away by almost driving into the tire wall, but narrowly missing it, trying to extend the track limits as much as humanly possible. And that is a very dangerous game you play at Sebring, especially when you get towards the outer edges of that final corner, that strong, long right-hand hairpin corner. Because it gets bumpier the further outside the track you go, and the bumpier it is, the less contact you have with the rubber on the ground. And as a result, the less grip you have. So, one of those situations where you play it risky, it can pay off, but take a little bit more than you can chew, and you might end up in that tire wall and accruing unnecessary damage that you're going to have to repair in the race. But certainly for qualifying, it's likely worth the risk.
Normal service looks to have resumed at the top of the GT3 standings as Miguel Almeida has finally got a lap in. It looks like it's going to be only the one flying lap for him as the timer on the session just starts to tick down. And one flying lap is all he wanted. A 1 minute 59.260 puts him nearly 3/10 clear at the top of the standings, as there's been an improvement in LMP2 as Dimitri Dennis is now up to 2nd place, only half a second off Luke Turnison. Nelson Clemente holding onto that 3rd place in qualifying so far. Alex Miller a full second back on the provisional pole sitter, but it is looking like we are at the end of qualifying as we turn our attention towards the race. So let's have a look at how the grid is going to stack up for the final race of the season. If anyone's playing How Many Times Taylor Mentions the final race of the season drinking game, so far it is 3. Actually, for anyone playing the Taylor Mills Complains About Hypercar drinking game, you've had to down a drink already. So on your final pole position for the championship, Luke Turnison for Unlucky Luke Racing is going to take that one from Dimitri Dennis for Fuelvine Racing. In third place, Nelson Commentator Rubis Gas by NGC will line up alongside the American of Alex Miller for Taylor Mills Racing. No relation, I promise. Dominic Isenberg and Sebastian Isenberg for Twin Turn Sim Racing will line up alongside each other on row 3 of the grid. And looking down towards row 4, Killian Clace and Alex Deiter will be keeping each other company there. And at the back of the LMP2 field will be Thomas Berlin. Amity, why don't you take us through the GT3 grid?
And heading through the GT3 grid, we have at the very top of the board, Miguel Almeida pulling it in with the final minute of this qualifying session to go. Once again, showing just his whole dominance throughout the whole season, once again demonstrating that, with Maxime Dumoulin pulling out a really fast one, only 0.2 tenths behind in the number 44. Philip Spess in the Ford Mustang Ryder Engineering Esports 777 is going to be starting in 4th on the left side of Diogo Teodoro in the Replica Racing Ford Mustang as well. 2 Mustangs sitting next to each other. The debutant, Christoph Zander, the 276 Ryder Engineering Esports car, is going to be sitting right next to Jeremy DeBover in the Vortex Black car in the number 14. Pandemonium Esports with Anthony Caranta is going to be in 6th position in the number 40 alongside Afonso Sudo. 219 is going to be sitting in 7th. And then 9th and 10th, bringing up the back of the field, is Jan Curbs and Henry Brown, the sole Canadian along the field, and the Project Valorous number 45, and Jan Curbs, the German, in Ryder Engineering Esports, a Ford Mustang as well, I believe. Or is it still the Audi? Nope, it is the Audi.
Do you know what I've just noticed?
What's that?
This is something that I'm completely nerding out over. The brand new BMW M2 safety car is leading the field away. I'm so happy about it. I love it so much. It's so cool. Look at it. Like, give us safety car cam. Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
I love that thing.
The new safety car.
That's Luke Tennyson. Wait, actually, you're using ATVO. You can't do safety car cam, can you?
I can give her a shot. Here we go. I got it.
Yeah, Shift V. Safety car cam. Look at that thing. It's so cool. Have you heard this thing on Idle as well? It sounds so good. It's got that nice little, I think it's a 6-cylinder in the front of that thing, but that nice little low just above idle burble coming out the back of it. It's a lovely car to drive as well. Very, very well made. I gave it a chuck around at Rudskagen earlier this week. At that series, that week 13 series, or week 14 series, I guess, it had an incident limit, and I thought it was unranked. So I saw the incident limit and I full-on panicked because I didn't have a clean race at all. But fortunately, it was just an unranked race with an incident limit, which was very strange to say the least. As to get a nice aerial shot of our 19 car field making its way through, well, the famous infield here at Sebring. You just about see the lights reflecting off the barriers up here in Blimpcam. Do you know what's really weird? I was going through the lap and we were coming up to all the corners, and I was just thinking to myself, I have forgotten every single corner name on this circuit, bar Tower and Sunset Bend. Slowly it's all coming back to me. I know we got Christensen out there on the track somewhere, the Fangio chicane. I think that big long left-hander is called Collier. But yeah, everything just completely went away from me.
Yeah, I can't recall. I can't recall either. I'm not very good at remembering turn names or numbers. All I'm good at knowing is what visual landmarks. I know what the corners are. I know what I'm supposed to do to get around the corner. I just don't know what to call them. I'm a professional.
You do it by corner numbers. But back in my early LMP1 days, we used to call Tower Bend what's it called? We used to call it Blue Groove, because after a while of racing, the dirt would be dragged onto the surface of the track, obviously not affecting the cars as much as it does now. The rubber would get laid down on top of it, and it become like a blue groove like you see in dirt racing, which is pretty cool. The GT3s, by the way, just coming through turn 15. That corner is called Gendebien.
Gendebien?
Yeah, Gendebien.
Gendebien.
Gendebien. Not.
That's got to be a name.
It sounds similar to something else, but it is Gendebien. So the field rolls its way around towards the formation zone for the final time this season, as we just waffled for 5.5 minutes. Luke Turnison leads the field towards the green flag. The M2 CS safety car pulls into pit lane for the first and final time in this championship. Into the start zone we go. Luke Turnison pulls away and gets an electric start compared to Clemente and Dennis. Dennis dropping behind Clemente. Miller sticking in fourth place. Isenberg actually staying ahead of Claes, but Sebastian Isenberg losing a place to Claes as Dimitri Dennis well wide through turn one. He's made enough of a gap to hold on to P3 for now, but let's turn our attention to the GT3s who have just got going as well. Miguel Almeida from pole position has got away very cleanly, but Maxime Dumoulin struggling almost to hold on to P2, taking that inside line through turn one. Is going to have to check up just a little bit on exit. Onto the sand and the grass he goes, with Diogo Teodoro having a look down the inside. The Mustang goes for it. There's contact at the apex of turn three. Both drivers keep it on the circuit, and just like that, Dumoulin from second down to third.
Thomas Burling having a bit of an incident, as well as Alex Dieter spinning in the hard right-hander that the GT3s are just about to approach here. Not exactly sure what would have caused that, but before we get to checking, we have actually three wide action right here. That's not going to end very well, and we've got two cars going around.
It never ends well down into the hairpin, and we've seen why you can't win the race on lap one, but you can certainly lose it. Curbs, Quaranta, Debova, the three cars most affected by that. We're going to see a replay of this incident now. You can see them already three wide. Can't quite tell who's who in this picture. It looks like, yeah, no, it's three McLarens actually down the inside there. I don't think Curbs is involved at all, but it's certainly very difficult to tell who's who in these light conditions. An onboard view from what I think should be Christoph Zander's car. There it is, of Reiter Engineering, just looking to the outside of Felix Bess's teammate, and just gets tagged in the rear. I think that was Afonso Suto for Sonic Racing Team in the Ferrari 296, as the LMP2 field is just coming through to complete its first lap. Here's a replay of what happened between Burling and Dieter. Concertina effect down into the hairpin. And I think both drivers just going for a spin on their own, locking up those cold rear tires. And here's Dieter's spin as well, which is going to seal the deal for that one. Just has a wiggle on entry. Burling loses control behind. And then Dieter just goes for a spin on exit. So two different spins in two different parts of the track there.
So Jeremy DeVoe are going to have to play a little bit of catch up. I think we might have had a bit of a wreck here, maybe a spin. Oh, thank God he's not beached. I thought he was beached there with the way the rear wheel just spun and locked up again. But that's Anthony Quaranta having a bit of an issue. We'll take a look at this. I think Young Curbs might have been involved in this.
Yeah, a driver that we've seen involved in many a lap one incident so far. He's already got damage on that front right corner, I think. But here it comes. Oh, just turns in for the corner. I don't think he saw Curbs down on the inside there at all. And after Curbs had such a great race at the Hockenheimring, you see the amount of extra speed he carries through the corner. Gets there very, very late, and Quaranta just closes the door. Both cars make contact with each other, and both of them sent into a bit of a spin. And it's going to be race to race over for both of those guys.
Oh, Jesus.
Ooh, I
think that was Jeremy DeBover going into the pits there.
Wow.
But yeah, unfortunately, I think that was a situation where two drivers had two different ideas of two different lines into one corner, and sometimes you get those kinds of situations. It seemed like Anthony Quaranta was trying to get a late apex on a corner where you really don't want to be doing that. Meanwhile, Young Curbs was kind of staying on the inside and unfortunately got the nose clipped by Anthony Quaranta. Hard to predict those kinds of situations when they do happen, especially on a corner like that where it's so long. But unfortunately, another incident catching out the GT3 field as we take a look at Nelson Clemente, who is trying to chase down Luke Tiernissen of the unlucky Luke number 396.
Yeah, Tennison looking very comfy at the front of the field as it stands, almost standing in as a replacement for Luke Smith. And he looks set to take a race win in both of the final two races of this championship. But we'll see what Clemente and Dennis have to say about that one as the race continues on. We're going to see some strategy come into this a little bit. You want to shoot for that 45 minutes if you can, but it'll be very tight on whether these cars can make it or not. Sebring, of course, being a very quick racetrack where you're spending so much time at full throttle, as these drivers are just doing everything they can to get back at least into the slipstream of Luke Turnerton to drag them all the way down that back straight into Sunset Bend. It's a great way to make up lap time if you can keep a hold of the car in dirty air, but for now, Turnerton looking nigh on dominant at the front of the field.
Luke Turnerton showing a fantastic amount of skill, showing that 2 weeks ago was no fluke. No fluke at all. As Fluky Luke. As we take a look at Sebastian Eisenberg and the 32 Twin Turn Sim Racing Aurora in 7th, chasing down Killian Clace in the Eagle Speed Academy esports car. And just ahead.
Yeah, it's not the first time we've seen these two going at it, getting involved in a scrap at the Nürburgring earlier this season. Eisenberg hoping for a repeat of that one, as he was the driver to come out on top in that particular battle. Clays only 3/10 ahead, closing to just about 2/10 on the exit of turn 1. Eisenberg isn't going to have an opportunity to go down the inside of 3. It's not really an overtaking spot unless you're dealing with a little bit of traffic. He's just got to focus on corner exit for the next few corners, and then maybe an opportunity will open up for him down there into turn 10. Through Big Bend they go, gap opening up to about half a second. Eisenberg just looking a touch faster over the course of the first few laps, so we'll see how the pace develops as Clays goes very wide through Fangio, touching the sand on the inside of that little chicane. It's going to compromise his run all the way through at turns 8 and 9, and maybe it's going to create an opportunity for Eisenberg. That grass and gravel and dirt on the tires hangs around a lot longer than it used to. Clay's feeling the effects of that under braking. Eisenberg not able to make a move, as it's going to stay lying astern for now as they continue towards the back stretch.
And as they head towards the final corners before that big long back stretch, big chicane here. Gonna take a look on board with Sebastian Eisenberg, heading far outside the white line that is allowed, and then grabbing a whole bunch of curb as much as possible to try and gather a run up to the final corner. A very hard braking zone, a very dynamic braking zone as well, very bumpy, as well as cornering while you're braking. Doing a fantastic job, both these drivers, to keep the cars straight and narrow. You can see Killian Clace just getting a little bit of a run onto the start-finish straight. And once again, this battle continues to stay mostly as it has been, but Eisenberg actually catching up just a little bit on that hard left.
Yeah, he just seems a little bit stronger in those really high-speed corners, but Clay seems to have his number in the low-speed twisty stuff of 3, 4, and 5, getting a better exit through 6 and Big Bend, as Eisenberg staying in that slipstream, trying to make up as much speed on the straight as he can. They're going to concertina up again into the hairpin. Clay's a lot comfier through there this time. That gap going to stay stable as they come through 8 and 9 yet again. Eisenberg not close enough to look for a move again, as it feels like this is how it's going to stay for a few laps until we get towards some traffic that the front of the field is already starting to deal with. A recovering Jeremy Dubova getting in the way of some of our top class prototypes, as the battle between Dennis and Clemente has really been broken up by Jeremy Dubova to what looks like to be about a second by now, and is starting to bring Alex Miller into this podium fight a little bit.
Meanwhile, elsewhere on the field, Diogo Teodoro, Miguel Almeida battling out for the lead of the GT3 class. Miguel Almeida already won the championship, so this is pretty much just a bragging rights fight, but just in the background, you can actually see the top 5 under a blanket. That is Maxime Dumoulin, Philip Spess, and Afonso Sudo chasing down the leaders. But right now, this duel between Teodoro and Almeida heating up just a little bit. You can see just how close they are, the two teammates.
And it's something we've seen, of course, before at Mugello when these two came together into turn 2 on lap 1, hoping for the opposite of that result this time, as Teodoro keeping Almeida very honest in these early stages of the race. That Mustang GT3 just looking a little bit sluggish on the straights compared to the McLaren 720S, but seems to do all of its catching up in the corners, which is far from what you'd expect from such a big lump. But you'd really expect the mid-engined European sports car to be the one that comes out on top in that fight, but that Mustang GT3 doing really well to keep up through Gendebien and Le Mans.
Well, I'll be darned. Ford made a Mustang that could turn. And you can see just how much of the advantage the Mustang has over the McLaren on the corners. Just an incredible amount of grip in that Mustang.
It's funny you should say that. Did you see the Mustang GTD go around? Not the GT3 GTD, but the road-going Mustang GTD that went around the Nürburgring in Düsseldorf in under 7 minutes. It is the first American-manufactured car to go under, American-manufactured production car to go under 7 minutes at the ring, and it was wet. Not wet, it was damp, and it was on road tires, and it went under 7 minutes.
Yeah,
that car bassed. It bassed.
Ridiculously quick.
I actually got to see it in real life. I went down to Bonn in Germany, and then down to the Nürburgring for the day back in June. And Ford and Multimatic, I assume it was Multimatic who were out there with it, were testing that car around the circuit before the Theresienfahrten. So yeah, we got to have a gander at that thing way before it set its official lap time. Story time with Taylor Mills.
I'm very jealous. I live in a very rural part of Canada, so, you know, any of the fun stuff, I'm very far away from it. I don't get to see any of the really cool things. Oh, well, all I see are dirt tracks. Which, I mean, dirt tracks are fine. They're fun. But dirt also... Sick. Yeah, they're fun. They're great. I get to see modifieds basically whenever I bloody well want. Spring, summer, they come around and I get to watch them. We have a dirt track here, but
that's cool.
Bad news is nearest racetrack, Ontario.
What the No, hang on. What that wouldn't be Toronto Place, because that's in flaming Toronto. What track's in Ontario?
What?
What track's in? Oh wait, is it that street circuit that the Pinty series goes to? What track is in Ontario?
The one you were thinking of is Montreal and Quebec. The one I was thinking of was Mosport in Ontario.
Oh, wait, hang on. Is Ontario a state?
A province.
Province. Oh, I thought it was a city.
Ontario, Ottawa is a city.
I'm thinking of Toronto.
You're thinking of either Ottawa or Toronto.
I'm 100% thinking of Toronto, because it's the IndyCar street circuit, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that used to exist. I don't know if it exists anymore.
It still does. At Toronto Place.
Oh, does it? Well, I mean, I don't know if it's still a track that they go to, because I don't think it's been on the IndyCar. I don't know if it's been on the IndyCar calendar lately.
We were there this year, weren't we? It's where
was it that or was it Vancouver?
Was it? No. It was Toronto, because it's where the bad man had his big crash. Do you not remember where he ramped off O'Ward and went into the catch fence and rode the catch fence?
No, you're right.
That was Toronto, right?
I believe so.
Okay, good. I'm not completely losing my mind, just a little bit losing my mind. Everything's fine. We're resettled. As the gap between Isenberg and Killian Claes gets a little bit close yet again, as we do switch focus back to the race that's happening out there in front of us. The battles up and down the field still really, really tight, but Sebring just not quite presenting the opportunities to make the overtakes happen. I think Isenberg just a little bit slow. Oh, that's a big wiggle for Claes. Isenberg has his own little wiggle, trying to avoid that one. And Claes is going to survive and stay in P6. Isenberg not happy with that one at all. Getting on the headlights flash, like, what are you doing, Killian? But goodness gracious me, that was almost a huge crash. You can see that one's got to Sebastian Isenberg already going very wide on the exit of Tower, and he may send a big one down the inside of Claes at some point in the next lap or so, because his patience meter is going to be through the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a very sketchy situation to be in for both drivers.
Here's the run. Sebastian Isenberger, the run out of Le Mans side by side. Another flash on the headlights to indicate either anger or saying thank you, because it looked, I don't know, Killian Kleist just very held up a little bit on corner exit. Isenberg moves up into P6, and he's now got a 4-second gap between him and Dominic Isenberg, as he's already starting to pull a gap on Kleist.
I'm not sure if there's something wrong with that car and Killian Kleist or what the issue seems to be, but that pace gap seems to be quite extreme. Oh, no, I think maybe Sebastian Isenberg is just pushing the car like crazy, going sideways through the corner, and now that gap has all but evaporated.
Yeah, it's not going to be quite the run that Kleist needs to make an overtake down here into turn 7, and he's going to have to hold off on that one for at least another couple of corners. Isenberg now with the clean air and the clear vision in front of him out on track, showing a little bit more of a turn of pace than we saw when he was in the dirty air and hidden from what blocks from view by Killian Kleist. It's now Kleist who has to deal with that one. Both cars cleanly through turn 10. Isenberg actually going a little bit wide on exit. Something he can do, because he can still run through the double left-hander flat from that angle, but it's Isenberg's job now to try and pull away and get on the back of Dominic Isenberg and try and make up that position. But Kleist just doesn't look like he has the pace to stick with the twin-turn sim racing driver at the moment.
When Sebastian Isenberg is able to lay down a lap, he's able to send an absolute flyer. And you can see just how much more speed Isenberg is able to get onto the back straight compared to Killian Kleist. Meanwhile, Diogo Teodoro still chasing down Miguel Almeida. Gap down to about 0.4 seconds, as it has been for the past couple laps. Mustang versus the McLaren, and in the background just behind them is Maxime Dumoulin in the McLaren as well. And then an LMP2 car just coming through the traffic behind this group of 3.
And the fight at the front of the GT3 field, again, another battle that's staying relatively stable for now, as this race is going to be a lot about survival as we just tick past 1 a.m. in sim. It's almost like we're in the middle of a 12-hour race here, even though I don't even think the 12-hour race goes on that late. Both cars punchy on the exit of turn 7, but Almeida just getting a better exit than the Ford Mustang GT3 driver behind, as it's your overall race leader, Luke Turnerton, who's squeezing through down into 10 on Teodoro, and will have to find a way past Miguel Almeida in a very tricky section. Looks to the left, then dives back to the right and down the inside of Tower. It's a tricky place to get a move done, because it's another one of those parts of the track where both classes of car are switching side, left to right to left to right to left to right of the track. I'm going to see even more side by side here, as Teodoro is going to get held up by traffic even more, as not Commentator even, and Miguel Almeida seeming relatively unbothered. Commentator is going to think better of going down the inside of Le Mans, and it's just going to settle into place for now. Dennis squeezing the car up the right-hand side on exit, getting on throttle very, very early, and there was almost a huge crash there.
The LMP2 cars once again making it through the field, as we've got this tight little battle happening for 4th position, I believe it is. Alex Miller trying to defend 4th up against the number 23 of Dominic Isenberg. And we saw a little bit of blinking from Alex Miller. This might be a bit of an issue moving forward. That netcode might be something we need to take extra precaution for and keep an extra eye on, as the 23 and the 41 go at it with each other.
Yeah, Isenberg having to peek down the inside into turn 3. Isn't going to be able to draw alongside that Dallara P217 in front, as Miller will hold on to 4th place for now, but there's still a little bit more traffic to deal with. This bunch a little bit less dense than the traffic they've just gone through. Miller pulling to the inside of Maxime Dumoulin, who's still floundering down there in 3rd place. And it's going to be Isenberg that's going to get held up through the hairpin. And now Miller's going to have to be relatively aggressive with Teodoro and Almeida in front if he wants to maintain a car between him and Isenberg, which is one of the most important things you can do in multi-class racing. He isn't going to go down the inside of Teodoro, and it's going to allow Dominic Isenberg to close right up to the back of that TMR driver. Miller going to have a look to either side of Teodoro, thinks about going down the outside, can't quite make that one stick. It's going to be Dominic Isenberg with the advantage on corner exit. They're going to be nose to tail as they come past that Ford Mustang. Side by side is Isenberg with Teodoro through the double left-hander, and then sends one up the inside of Gendebien. Miller and Isenberg side by side over the concrete. Through them all they go, and they touch. There's a little bit of contact between Isenberg and Miller. Mostly net code on that, and what a huge save for Miller, who is going to be frustrated with that, now coming under loads of pressure from Sebastian Isenberg. Side by side they are on the run down to Sunset. Almeida is going to get in the way of both of these. Isenberg on the inside line will move up to 5th place, has to check up on corner exit. It's going to allow Miller the exit, and there's another bit of contact. Isenberg and Miller on the exit of Sunset, and this time it's Isenberg that has to save it.
What in the world? The LMP2s are turning a race into an FD event. They're going sideways everywhere. What in the world is happening? Alex Miller now going rallycross. This is 3 motorsport events in 1. We have to take another look at this.
Alex Miller completing the bingo card of having contact with Isenberg's, hitting both of them or being hit by one or the other in the space of a lap. Here they are side by side into the mall. It's a lot of netcode down here at the apex. Miller just about hangs on to that one, but it compromises his exit massively up the Ullman straight and puts him under all the pressure from Sebastian Isenberg. Sebastian Isenberg, as they go side by side on entry to Sunset Bend. Isenberg's going to have the advantage on the inside, tries to sneak back to the inside of Miguel Almeida, doesn't quite make it work, and as he comes down to the inside, Miller picks up the throttle, and it's 2 cars into 1, and Miller almost turns Isenberg on the exit of 17, and that is another crash that could have happened, but somehow didn't.
I'm speechless. I know that's a terrible thing for a commentator to be. It's my job to talk, but I don't know what to say about that except, wow. Yeah. The driving talent on display to be able to save going that far sideways, that fast in those cars, nutty skill level to try and save that. That's incredible. No overcorrections or anything. It was just snap straight. Incredible talent.
And again, all helped by the new tire model. It's one that is a lot more easy to manage in situations like that, and certainly helped out Miller and Sebastian Isenberg in both of those situations. So again, bravo to iRacing for giving us a tire model that actually makes sense. But it's Isenberg on the recovery now. Miller trying to close back onto the rear end of Dominic Isenberg. As if these 3 start fighting, it's going to get very confusing very quickly. Killian Clay starting to apply the pressure to Sebastian Isenberg, who with that incident has just dropped back into range of the Eagle Speed Academy driver, and is going to have to start worrying about the car behind before he can start even thinking about Alex Miller in front. Miller leading the train right now for P5 down to, well, almost P9, because Thomas Berlin, who got into a spin earlier on in this race, has actually closed up onto the back of these guys.
I think I might have found the answer to the question, or the hypothesis that I had posed earlier in the broadcast at the top of the stream. I'd mentioned that people are either going to be very gentle and very laid back, or they're going to be super aggressive because there's nothing to lose. And I think we've already shown today that there is one particular mindset that seems to be prominent out on the racetrack, and we've seen a lot of aggression, at least out of the LMP2 cars, and we love to see it. We love to see those hard fighting, and with this new tire model, as you mentioned, more forgiving in a slide. Oh my God, Sebastian Isenberg getting so sideways. Once again, another slide caught by an LMP2 driver, and that really demonstrates the fantastic mercy that these tires are now showing. No longer is this known as the ice racing tire model, where your flash heating tires just turn to ice as soon as you look at a little bit of a slide. Now you can catch these cars at ridiculous speeds the way they should be.
I can't tell you how happy I am that flash heating has gone. Don't get me wrong, the surface temps still spike, but they shed that that extra temperature in a much more realistic way. Killian Clace gets an awful run through 1 and is now going to come under all sorts of pressure from Alex Dieter down into 3. Dieter almost getting overlap into turn 3, but just backs out of it at the last second, knowing that he definitely didn't have enough to make to be entitled to space down there. So good heads-up driving from Dieter to avoid another bit of contact in the rear quarter for Sebastian Isenberg. Sorry, for Killian Clace there. I'm getting all my drivers mixed up now. Big concertina effect down into the hairpin as Dieter sniffing the rear end of Clace, is just having a look at that fight in GT3 that has just stayed so stable for the last 2 laps or so. But what we really want to keep our eyes on right now is how is Alex Dieter gonna make that move on Killian Clace. Clace has just been struggling in phases around this lap, and if Dieter can get in the sort of rhythm where he's in the right spot at the right time, when Killian Clace makes that mistake, loses that pace, it's when that opportunity is going to be opened up for Dieter. So he just has to keep his eyes forward at this point and then try and get that Slippers Racing team card past the Eagle Speed Academy.
Incredible racing from the LMP2 class. Gotta be honest, I'm not much of a prototype fan. Don't really like prototypes all that much. I'm a tin top fan. I like my sports cars. I like my little showroom cars, but I gotta be honest, this sold me. I might want to get a prototype. I might want to.
These are sports cars. These are the epitome of sports cars. These are peak sports cars. Prototypes are as great as sports cars get, as Dieter looking for that shorter inside line down into 1 isn't going to get it done on the brakes, as we're only 26 minutes into this race and it's already had probably the same amount of action as we saw at Indy GP. Sebring providing plenty more opportunities for cars to get close, but certainly a difficult track to overtake at, as Clace gets another terrible exit out of 5, has a compromised run, but the inside line gives him the advantage. But Dieter looks to the inside of the hairpin. They both break really evenly into turn 7, as Dieter isn't going to be able to draw alongside. Wiping the dust off the windscreen goes the windscreen wiper, as that gap's going to open back up to 0.6 of a second, as Clace again is going to live to fight another day.
We've been seeing a little bit of push and pull in this grouping so far. You'll see the cars, you'll see some drivers catch up a little bit in certain areas and then fall back in certain areas. That particular situation, though, Killian Clace just barely a little bit more brave on the brake, so barely a little bit later on it, and a little bit more efficient as well, as it seemed Alex Dieter had to stay off the throttle a little bit longer to get the car to rotate, and couldn't quite get on the throttle as quickly as Killian Clace had. So a large gap has now been produced as a result of that, and it's going to take a little bit of time to try and catch back up, as this group of 3 has now devolved into a group of 2 between Alex Dieter and Killian Clace. That's Sebastian Isenberg basically split apart from now with a 1.6 gap. Oh! That's wall contact. That is Sebastian Alex Dieter in the wall, hard on the left side. There's probably a little bit of damage there. Would not be surprised if there was. Hard to see in the darkness here, but
I was about to say.
a little hard to see in the darkness, but certainly that was quite heavy contact on the left side of the car. Even with the left side pod camera, I can't quite make out if there's any damage here. Oh, there is. You can see the wheel is poking out a little bit from the fender.
I'm trying to make it out, but it is a right-hand corner down there, so it could just be a trick of the car turning. I need just a little bit more light on it. The start-finish straight certainly has a better view, but it does look like Dieter's just struggling a little bit in the slow speed, so maybe some bent suspension on the front left corner of that car. Or maybe you just had a bad run through the hairpin and we're projecting a little bit and can't actually tell what's going on. That is a completely valid thing. It's dark. It's difficult to see cars in this light, and we're going to have to wait another half a lap or so until we can actually diagnose the problem and see what's going on for that number 2 car.
I mean, I did see the car, like on the interior camera, I did see it bop off the wall, and you saw the steering inputs adjust accordingly. There is a possibility that maybe the netcode just showed us an contact with the wall that didn't actually happen. That's a possibility, but it did look like the car shifted a little bit, and it looked like the driver had reacted to it. It's just a measure of how much damage had actually been incurred by that contact, because I do know the tire walls can be forgiving, at least compared to some of the concrete barriers around the track. You can kind of seemingly scrape up against the tire walls without incurring much damage, which is kind of the opposite of what you would expect.
I was going to say,
can you a tire wall will,
tire barriers?
Yeah, a tire wall is going to suck you in and then throw you around, whereas a concrete barrier, you can kind of ping off them if you hit them right. But if you hit them in exactly the wrong spot, you can also like completely shatter everything on that corner of your car.
It usually tends to be if you've got a little bit of steering lock in, and it's either the front or rear edge of the tire that catches the concrete. In a fight between carbon fiber and concrete wins, and that's how you get broken suspension links, wishbones and tie rods and whatever it is that breaks on these cars when they hit a wall. As the fight between Claes and Dieter has gotten a little bit close again, as they come into a little bit of traffic of Jeremy DeBova, who's way off the back of the GT3 field and very out of sync with the rest of his classes. We're just turning our eye a little bit towards the the LMP2 pit window, even as we're only about 10 or 15 minutes away from that one also. So these guys wanting to get their slipstream or be in their clean air, whatever strategy it is they want to do, as Dieter is going to have to squeeze through DeBova, and there's contact through turn 14. Dieter just not making room for the McLaren on the inside, turning himself on the nose of the GT3 car. There is nowhere that DeBova could have gone there, and a fight that was looking to get a little bit spicy is now completely over, as Dieter has to recover from that spin and crack on.
I'm going to take another look at that. You can see just barely not enough room. I'm going to reverse it just a little bit to see what actually happened here. Slow-mo.
Yeah, I think DeBova just giving no room on the outside of 14 there, and maybe Dieter almost in a little bit of frustration with the McLaren driver, just squeezes him right to the inside of the corner. It's another one of those two cars into one. And I think it's one of those where both drivers needed to give each other a little bit more room there. Both classes of car can go flat through 14. And it's just, we talked about respect the bumps. You got to respect each other out there on track. And these two just showing each other a complete lack of respect. And that's how you end up in these incidents. Ask me how I know.
Very unfortunate event for the battle that we did have for 7th position, but now this is developed towards the front end of the field. The battle for 2nd position. Nelson Clemente and Dimitri Dennis of Rubis G by NGC and Fuelvine Racing, respectively. Nelson Clemente in 2nd. Dimitri Dennis in 3rd.
Yeah, Clemente having done a brilliant job to hold on to P2 for now. Just a random fact. Dimitri Dennis was fastest of all through sector 2 on the previous lap, which is the run between turns 2 and just before the braking zone for the hairpin. So there you go, you can have that one for free. Oh, and I think there's been a change of position a little bit further down the field as well. I think maybe a spin for, Sebastian Isenberg going very wide in chase of Alex Miller through Tower Corner, gets his left rear tire on the grass on the outside of that corner, spins into the wall on the inside, and it's going to be another LMP2 that's having a bit of a recovery drive. But to get back to this fight that we're seeing on our screens, Dennis just hounding the rear end of Clemente right now, but just not able to get there. Turners are not looking as dominant as he perhaps did at the start of this race as well. Only a couple of seconds clear of this fight for P2. So one mistake is going to bring the driver of the 396 right back into this battle, as maybe, Amity, we could see a three-way fight for the leads.
We might just see that, and it would be the first time that we'd seen 3 cars battling for the lead in this series all season long. earlier in the season, we'd been seeing Luke Smith. I remembered his name this time. Luke Smith from England, dominating the whole season. Only really having competition from one driver who showed up once for Nürburgring GP and left. And now that Luke Smith is not here, we are now seeing a bit of a tighter battle between the top three. But Nelson Clemente is going to have to try and hurry along to try and catch up. But the disadvantage of that is if you're not defensive enough to defend your position from third place Dimitri Dennis, you might actually just end up getting passed. But one thing that I do know is a pretty effective way of catching the leader is if the car behind you that is technically battling for position just sits behind you and the two of you work together to try and catch. That's by far the quickest way to gather up the leader and try and battle for the top spot in the race. And we are now almost, I believe if I'm reading correctly, well, we are beyond 30 minutes in this race. 35 minutes gone past, and it's been flying like seconds.
Canadian education didn't fail you in terms of reading numbers then? That's excellent news.
Mildly. It mildly. I listen, it's not the Canadian education system, it's the Saskatchewan education system. That particular province is the worst in the country.
I think I remember you saying that one.
Yeah.
But Dimitri Dennis then just dropping off the back of Clemente a little bit in this first sector. A sector that we saw him so dominant in only a couple of laps ago. Almost a shame to see that one turn around. But just a little update on the battle that we saw for 5th place in LMP2 earlier on in this race. That battle has well spread out with Alex Deisser and Sebastian Isenberg both making mistakes in the last few laps. So now we're looking at a 2.5 second gap between Miller and Dominic Isenberg, and another 3.7 back to Killian Claes, and another 6.5 back to Thomas Berlin, who's done a great job to recover so far, but everyone still has a very long way to go if we want these gaps to be as close as they were earlier on in this race. 2 seconds clear at the front of the field is Luke Turnison as it stands, as he comes up against a little bit more GT3 traffic. It looks like it's the battling pair of, well, it's 2 Reiter engineering cars of Christoph Zander and Felix Max. Turnison is actually going to turn down pit lane and make the first pit stop of the race. This feels very early, but Dennis is going to follow him in as well. So perhaps these cars not quite able to make it to that 45-minute mark.
We've seen in the past couple races that some LMP2 drivers have elected to make a 2-stop situation. This is probably one of those situations, the 35 to 37 minute range, right about where people were making their pit stops. So because Luke Turnison and Dimitri Dennis have both taken the pit stop, that means with a fairly comfortable gap, Nelson Clemente is now in the lead of this race as the two take their pit stop. Meanwhile, just behind, I believe that was Philip Spess and Christoph Zander. 2 drivers who are very close together, 0.5.
Hold on, mate. We've seen a change of lead. Dimitri Dennis in the pit cycle has actually taken the net lead of this race. Turnison's dropped 1.2 seconds off the back of the Fuelvine Racing driver. As when the pit stop cycles out, we're going to see a new race leader in this one.
Oh no.
And Turnison's off. Big spin through 4 and 5. Into the wall goes Luke Turnison. That is front end damage and possible suspension, as Dennis is now going to be in a very comfortable spot in the net lead of this race. As Amity, it looks like we're going to see another brand new race winner in LMP2 in just as many weeks.
With Luke Turnison towing to the pits, completely throwing the front clip of that car off on the Armco barrier. You are absolutely correct. We are guaranteed a brand new race winner in LMP2. What a tremendously tragic, tragic, whatever you want to call it. That is a serious incident for Luke Tennyson. Those cold tires, still very eager to bite at the soonest inclination of loss of grip. These cars, these tires, they're more forgiving, they're more merciful, but the cold tires will still bite you.
Nelson Commentator and Killian Clace both make their way down pit lane. Both Isenbergs, Berlin and Miller choosing to, and I think Alex Deiter as well, actually, choosing to stay out longer. So those guys are going to make it to about the 40-minute mark as it stands. It could explain a little bit of the pace difference between some of these guys and the front end of the field, perhaps doing a little bit more fuel saving than everybody else. It is quite a long pit lane here at Sebring, but it's certainly a fast one and a relatively short fuel stop. So we could see a couple of different strategies really come into play here, as it's going to be Dominic Isenberg that will clock a lap lead. Alex Miller in second place as it stands. Thomas Berlin in P3. And Sebastian Isenberg in fourth. Of course, this will be all change when the pit stop cycles out. It's a very long pit stop, in fact, for Killian Clace, who makes his way back out onto the circuit, almost 30 seconds longer than the fuel volume racing car of Dimitri Dennis. So maybe even a little bit of difference in fuel strategy for both of those drivers, as the pit stop timer depressingly continues to tick up for Luke Tennyson, who had that crash on pit lane exit only a couple of laps ago.
Unfortunately, the Wheel of Fortune spinning it completely 180 from the last event we saw at Indianapolis. We saw Unlucky Luke, the Luke Tennyson, getting that win 2 weeks ago, and now, unfortunately, having the same bad luck he had been having earlier this season. Meanwhile, Alex Miller is still fuel saving, doing a little bit of lift off, entering the corners. Meanwhile, Thomas Berling and Alex Deiter are now dipping into the pits. Dominic and Alex staying out. Sebastian Isenberg also staying out.
Yeah, it's going to be very marginal to see if these guys can make it to 45 minutes. I think they're going to need at least another lap on top of this one. I'd maybe try and go another lap after that if you can, to make sure you can just push a little bit more in that second stint. But I am more than a little bit intrigued as to how this how the strategy in this race is starting to unfold. We've got loads of different cars on ever so slightly different two-stop strategies. Some cars taking more fuel than others, some cars taking less. It's something that I'm going to be keeping just one eye on as the rest of the stint continues. Fortunately, I can actually see exactly how long everyone was stopped for, so we know who owes us a long stop and who owes us a short stop at the end of this one. Overlays, ladies and gentlemen, and those who know better, they are very helpful. Following with Alex Miller then in the number 41 Taylor Mills racing car, the bright blue, just the light, what little light there is glinting off its vaguely metallic surface. Dominic Isenberg coming around the final corner. Is he going to dive down pit lane? No, he is going to stay out. So it will be 45 minutes for Dominic Isenberg. Alex Miller dives down pit lane. It's going to be marginal on the one stop for him. We'll see how it unfolds for the driver of the number 41 car. I'd expect a full tank, 4 tires. No driver change in this one. Miller is doing this race solo, as Dominic Isenberg looks to be in the hot seat for this race.
The Isenberg brothers now sitting 1 and 2. Both drivers yet to pit. Isenberg about 15 seconds behind his brother, Dominic.
Did we ever confirm they were brothers?
I would assume so.
They could be cousins.
I don't know. None of my cousins have my same last name.
Mine do. Although, to be fair, I did choose to take mum's surname when I was like, I don't know, 7. Really long time ago. Almost 20 years ago, actually.
Your parents gave you that choice?
It's a long story.
Fair enough. I just,
Alex
as soon as
Miller.
I said that, I realized maybe I shouldn't be prying into people's personal matters.
Certainly not on a sim racing broadcast. Alex Miller makes his way out of pit lane, then rejoins the circuit after a full service stop. 4 tires, full tank of fuel, and no, he's actually gone into a spin down at turn 3, just getting a touch of the grass on entry to the 3rd corner of the circuit. Will rejoin tentatively, but a couple of drivers really getting caught out by the cold tires. Miller being one of them is going to lose a good chunk of time relative to the rest of the field. Here comes the replay for you. It should just be a touch of the grass through turn 2 that unsettles the car, and actually it wasn't. Cold tires just biting that Dallara P217 right on the rear end. Miller keeps it out of the barrier, having a spin much earlier in the lap than Tennison did, as he's now got Thomas Berlin for company as he tries to get that rubber up to temperature. How aggressive is he going to defend as both Isenbergs come down pit lane? Those two on probably the optimum strategy. Side by side is Berlin and Miller down into turn 10, and Berlin is going to take the position. Miller very tentative on that outside line, just losing a little bit of faith in the car as he tries to relearn exactly where that limit is over the next 2 laps.
Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Dimitri Dennis is now going to resume the lead. Ahead of Nelson Clemente, ahead of Luke Turnison, who was previously leading this race until an incident removing the front clip of the car. Nelson Clemente now in second, Killian Clace just heading down the back stretch.
A driver change?
Oh, yeah, there's a driver change. Renee Thalasinos actually switching into the twin-turn sim racing X-Ray, replacing Dominic Eisenberg. That's the first driver change I think I've seen all season.
Well, certainly in a while. Thalasinos going to take the wheel of that LMP2 car, and now we're not going to get mixed up between Isenbergs. It's a Christmas miracle. But no, these two cars definitely on the better strategy for the end of this race, making it to that 45-minute mark before they had to come down pit lane. Dennis may be in the net lead at the moment, but him and Clemente both owing us a pit stop, whereas we think that both twin-turn sim racing cars can make it to the end of this race. Berlin is going to dive up the inside of Sebastian Isenberg into the hairpin and make up another position out there on track. But one thing I can guarantee you is the driver of that number 32 car is not complaining. As long as both of these cars can maintain the pace, Isenberg can just save fuel in the slipstream.
Going to be interesting to see how this strategy plays out. Lots of fighting through the LMP2 field. The GT3s have mostly been stagnant, staying mostly where they have been since the start. Miguel Almeida, Diogo Teodoro, Maxime Dumoulin, Christoph Zander, Philip Spess, Jeremy DeBover. That's your first to sixth, and it's been like that since the start.
Yeah, and to do your midway race rundown on the LMP2 field as well, not to leave them out. Dimitri Dennis, your net race leader at the moment. Nelson Clemente up there in P2. Both of those cars on the 2-stop strategy. Renee Thalasinos has just got on board the twin-turn sim racing X-Ray car. Those guys are on that 1-stop as Sebastian Isenberg almost hits the barrier on the outside of Sunset Bend. Killian Clace down in P4, also on that 2-stop strategy alongside Thomas Berlin in P5. And the sister twin-turn sim racing car, got it out there eventually. Sebastian Isenberg still on board that one, also on the 1-stop, 2.2 seconds or so in front of the Taylor Mills Racing car of Alex Miller, who is marginal on being able to make that 1-stop work. He did have a little bit of a spin, so he's got some time to regain, but has to do a lot of fuel saving. Alex Deiter for Slippers sim racing team down in P8. And your last in LMP2 is the out of this race unlucky Luke Racing. Luke Turnison on board that one. So as we mentioned, a brand new race winner in this event. It looks like it's going to go the way of Renee Thalasinos, as it stands, but it's all going to depend on what sort of pace Dimitri Dennis, Nelson Clemente have at the end of this one. Currently, goodness me, 27 and a bit seconds clear of Rene Thalassinos. So really, Thalassinos needs to pick up the pace just a little bit if he wants to stay within that pit window. It's 1:05 stationary lap time, but for those guys, it's really going to be a splash and dash at the end of this race, and then they might be able to come through. This race is going to get exciting at the end. Love me some strategy.
Very exciting indeed. Meanwhile, towards the top of the GT3 field, GT3s have yet to start their pit cycle. Typically, they'll head into the pits just about 5 to 10 minutes after the LMP2s start doing so. So these cars should be starting to dive in for some fuel and maybe some tires in the next 10 minutes or so. But for now, Diogo Teodoro and Miguel Almeida holding on to P1 and P2 respectively. Meanwhile, just in the background is Maxime Dumoulin and the number 44 McLaren. That there in the background, I believe, was Thomas Burling, if I am using my brain correctly, although I might not be. Nope. Was
Yes.
incorrect.
No. Who was it?
Not exactly sure.
The 158. The 158 of Dimitri Dennis, no?
Might have been.
Cutting his way through the traffic down into turn 1.
Oh yeah, it was.
8.5 seconds clear of P2.
Yep. That's the one. 158. I don't know. I tried reading the numbers, but like I said earlier, that Saskatchewan education system isn't really helping me much.
Only 7 races in the championship as well. Hard to make those mental links between numbers and drivers. It isn't like a Formula 1 season where we've got 24 races in a year.
I mean, it wasn't whether or not I'd remembered who was driving what number. It's that I couldn't read the number in the first place.
Oh, because it's dark on track. Right.
Sure.
I'm following now.
Yeah, let's go with that. So we take a look at the number 23 and the number 88. See, I can read. Battling each other on track now. Killian
Battling
Claes.
on track was your battling dyslexia.
Yes. Well, I think that's dyscalculia. Dyscalculia?
Oh, is there a difference?
Yes, there's a difference. Dyslexia
See, I'm
is with
stupid.
letters and words. Dyscalculia is with numbers.
I love that. I hate it for anyone who has it, but it's really interesting.
Yeah.
4/10 of a second then is the gap between Rene Thalassinos and Killian Claes. Both these cars on very different strategies as it starts to shake itself out. Claes still on that, as if anything's changed, on that 2-stop with Rene Thalassinos on the 1-stop. Good pace being shown by Thalassinos for now to stay in front of the 88 of Killian Claes, but maybe thinking a little bit strategically. It's something Twin Turn Sim Racing could do here. Slot in behind Claes and get in that slipstream for a little bit and save some extra fuel to keep that pace up, gain some free lap time in the slipstream, have some bigger lift and coast into the corners, and just give yourself some more fuel to push with at the end of the race. It's got to be on their mind and be something they're thinking of. Thalassinos hooks the curb on the exit of Genda BN, ruins his run through Le Mans. So this could be an opportunity for Claes to get by. Claes pulls to the inside. They are just side by side as they come down the Allman Straight. They will enter Sunset Bend, absolutely drawn together. Thalassinos backs out of that one, slots into the dirt, looks for the exit. They're going to concertina back up in the middle of the corner. Both cars, though, are going to get a very even exit from the turn, and I think Thalassinos is just going to stay behind here and maybe do that little bit of fuel saving I suggested as we have our first GT3 down pit lane. Second GT3 down pit lane, even.
So Philip Spess is going to be taking a pit stop there. Miguel Almeida, Diogo Teodoro, and Maxime Dumoulin still yet to pit. Meanwhile, we have a couple battles brewing here in LMP2. Alex Miller and Alex Dieter fighting each other here, the number 2 and the number 41, while Killian Claes takes the 3rd position from Rene Thalasinos, who took over from Dominic Eisenberg. I haven't seen any other driver changes aside from that one, and in fact, I think that was the first and only one that we've had in this whole series, a driver change.
A couple, to be fair. I couldn't name them all off the top of my head, but we saw a good number of them at the start of the season, just not so many as the season drew on.
Fair enough. And
90 minutes is it's a good length for solo drivers.
And this lead change was actually caused by Rene getting a little bit of a beach situation, scraping the floor of the car onto the raised curb. In that sector we just saw them rolling through, that quick chicane almost, that very fast moving chicane, and managed to let Killian Claes by with the amount of momentum that had been lost scraping that floor against the ground. And meanwhile, it looks like Maxime Dumoulin has caught up to Diogo Teodoro, who has fallen off of Miguel Almeida, so we might see a change of position finally in GT3.
Yeah, perhaps a mistake for Teodoro at some point in the last couple of laps. He hadn't quite... Nothing in the event list, so it can't have been anything too major, but it could have also just been a little bit of traffic management. It's always one of those things at this circuit when cars get separated. We saw, actually, earlier on when I think it was Alex Dieter and Jeremy DeBova that had that incident down at turn 14. And that's the sort of thing that can happen to anyone here at Sebring. As I mentioned earlier, it's one of those tracks where both classes of cars are constantly switching sides of the track just because that's where the racing line goes, and it can make any sort of traffic management, well, really difficult to handle, as we're just following this fight on board with Maxime Dumoulin in the McLaren 720S GT3 as Diogo Teodoro in a car that has looked a lot stronger than the McLaren's mid-corner exits onto the back straight, as it's now going to be an opportunity for both of the V8s in those cars to sing a little bit and push their cars down the straight. Both drivers even entering Sunset Bend, a bit of a wiggle mid-corner for Teodoro. He just about holds on to that one. Gap though stays stable just about as Miguel Almeida dives down pit lane for his first pit stop of the race.
And so this is the second GT3 car to make a pit stop in this race, I believe, somewhere around there, not including the damage repairs that we've seen earlier in the race.
It is actually the third. Spes, Zander, and Spes, Zander, and Almeida. I forgot his name for a second there. Goodness gracious me, what is wrong with me? It's late in the day, it's late in the season. We're all starting to lose our minds a little bit. But Dumoulin doing everything he can to close that gap up, is just have a quick flick over to Thomas Berlin and Sebastian Isenberg. Gap between those two just getting closer and closer and closer. Isenberg a couple of tenths of a second quicker per lap over the last 3 or so. And again, it could be another opportunity for the Twin Turn Sim Racing team to save some fuel on another car, as long as they're not losing any time. Thalasinos, I think, was in that position, but has just dropped out of at least the strongest pull of the slipstream on Killian Claes. He'll get that position back later on in this race when Claes makes his second pit stop. And we assume Thalasinos continues to the end of this race. Isenberg in a very similar position with Thomas Berlin just in front, Berlin a little bit wide through Tower Corner. It's not going to compromise his exit too much, as he's just going to fly down that straight towards Genderbien. Animal yet again, these LMP2s absolutely flying around the track in these, well, relatively warm track temps, I'd say. It's not often we see 25 Celsius at night, although I guess it is Central Florida, right?
Yeah, that sounds like Central Florida in my from my experience, not being there, just knowing people who live there.
Teodoro and Dumoulin have pitted, by the way, so we'll see where they come out relative to Miguel Almeida, who was the first of this lead trio to make a trip down pit lane. Currently about 30 seconds back on Maxime Dumoulin. Both cars stopping practically nose to tail in the pit lane. Up on the jacks goes Dumoulin. Teodoro, I think, doing the same as the gap ticks down and ticks down and ticks down. Now coming just under 10 seconds as we flick over to Felix Spess, who's in a little bit of a fight of his own with his own teammates. Dennis looking for a way through. Your overall race leader almost makes contact with the Reiter Engineering Ford Mustang. Going to get down his inside into the more corner. Spess will set up for the exit, but can't get the exit he wanted as there was an LMP2 in the way of that one. As Miguel Almeida is going to retake the lead in GT3, now 6 seconds clear at the front. So a great call to pit when he did. And it's put him at such an advantage as Spess down the inside of Sunset Bend on the series rookie. Side by side they are. Spess takes the lead, not the lead, takes the position with a block pass on the exit of the corner. Stays to the left-hand side of the circuit, not giving his teammate any opportunity to go down the inside. Xander looking to the outside of one is actually going to hold it there as they go side by side through the first corner. Xander goes very wide and just about manages to hold on to it. Still a gap up the inside for Xander to squeeze into if he wants to, but he cuts back to the inside. More overlap on his teammate as they almost make contact. Look at the advantage that Xander has mid-corner. It is almost the exact reverse of what we've seen in these two cars against each other before. Nelson Commentator in the background is going to take away a chance for Xander to overtake. Xander's going to look to the outside anyway. Hard on the brakes into turn 7 as they go side by side again. Spess just a little bit deep as they just touch a little bit as they run through turn 8. Spess is going to have the shorter run down the inside, but Xander still in the slipstream, looks to the outside. Spess takes that opportunity away as he cuts back to the inside. Big dive on the brakes from Xander, just about manages to keep it on the circuit, but has lost so much momentum, and Felix Spess is going to hold on to P4.
And just as we were taking a look at that incredible battle, super aggression from Christoph Xander, we take a look at an LMP2 battle that is developing now, actually, between Thomas Berling and Sebastian Eisenberg. Both of these drivers actually very close to each other. Genuinely, what a battle that was from the GT3 cars. We've seen nothing for pretty much the first half of the race, the first third of the race, and then out of nowhere, Reiter Engineering teammates just out for blood with each other.
Rule 1 of sim racing is do not hit your, well, rule 1 of racing is do not hit your teammate. And these two taking it to the absolute extremes as Thomas Berlin is still just about holding off Sebastian Isenberg. I think for the most part, that's going to be a case of Isenberg just holding on to that slipstream and trying to save a little bit of fuel. I don't expect any sort of move to be pulled off on Berlin, but Isenberg is going to have a run on the way down to the 17th corner on the circuit. Down the Ullman straight they go, nose to tail. And you can see that Isenberg just isn't making any progress in the slipstream. And I guarantee you that's because he's just about 80% throttle or so, burning a lot less fuel on that straight and just saving as much as he can for the final phase of this race, where he knows he's going to have to go fast if he wants to hold on to that position. But yeah, with racing, don't hit your teammate, but it's always those that you know that you can race the hardest, because you practice with your team week in, week out on the same track. And as much as team practice sessions are about finding some lap time, learning off each other, in a 2-hour session, eventually, I guarantee you a race is going to break out as Isenberg looking to the outside of Berlin down into 7. Berlin is going to chop the nose off on entry to the corner. A much bigger gap than the camera was telling us there was on that one. But I'm just trying to keep an eye on this fight for P4 in GT3, because Xander has absolutely not given up on making up that position. He's actually going to have a look down the inside of Gendabien, just about gets a nose alongside the bumper of Specs. Specs is going to hold it there into the mall, but checks up again on exit. Xander just overshooting corners at the moment as it's V8 twin turbo versus V8 naturally aspirated down the Allman straight. Spess pulling to the inside to take away any chance at the inside of Sunset Bend for Christoph Zander. Is Zander going to be able to hold on around the outside? He goes for a much wider line through the corner, perhaps focusing on exit, a spot where his car has had a great advantage so far in this race. Nose to tail, they still are. Spess has been doing a little bit of weaving down the start-finish straight to break the slipstream. Does it again. Zander follows, speed builds, looking to the inside is the McLaren. That overlap again. The Mustang having to go a little bit wide at the apex as they are back to side-by-side. Both cars through two, squeezing each other into three. Zander on the inside, leaving each other as much space as they can, almost touching again. As Spess is going to hold on, goes wide through four. Both cars again nose to tail through Big Bend, and maybe another opportunity for Christoph Zander down into the hairpin. Let's see what he can do from 0.2 of a second back. Spess moves to the inside. Zander late on the brakes, moves very late to the inside. Spess gives him space that he definitely wasn't entitled to. Is going to get the run out of the corner again, but Zander shorter run to the inside of the circuit. The side-by-side racing will continue down into turn 10. This is where Zander had his biggest opportunities. They almost touch again. He's going to go late again, but doesn't get anything alongside that time. As Spess is going to hold off his teammate for the fourth time in the last 2 laps. Oh, and it's another big dive into Tower. How is Spess? Because he's got to be expecting these at this point, because these dives from Zander are huge as they go back to side by side through the double left at Bishop. Zander looking for a way down the inside again to Bien. Big squeeze from Spess as they keep going side by side. Zander down the inside of Lamar. He had to check up on exit. Doesn't have to do the same this time, but Spess on the outside. It is Zander with the advantage on the right-hand side of the circuit this time, chops his nose off, gives his teammate a lot of slipstream as that Ford Mustang brick, and they both weave. Spess back to the inside, and there's almost contact again between the two Ricer Engineering teammates. Zander up into P4, has the advantage on the exit of Sunset. Back down the start-finish straight they go yet again. Flash of the headlights from the Mustang behind. What are they going to do? Both giving each other absolutely nothing. Spess goes to the inside. Zander holds it wide, has to check up the exit yet again. Side by side, they almost touch, and Spess into the barrier in avoidance of his teammate. There might be a bit of damage on the left-hand side of that Ford Mustang GT3, and it may bring this battle to an end.
No, that was a touch. That was absolutely a touch. Christoph Zander got off track just a little bit, lost a little bit of control of the McLaren, not enough to spin around, but certainly enough to dart back out on track a little bit more aggressively than he would have liked. And Philip Spess getting door checked, thrown off the track, and only barely scraped the Armco with that quick thinking. These two drivers were absolutely at each other's necks. Nothing left in either car, nothing in it, and that was just a bloodbath. And now Philip Spess is caught up once again to the back end of Christoph Zander. Oh my lord, what is going on? This is crazy battling.
And throughout all of this, Killian Claes and Dimitri Dennis have made that last stop of the race, but Spess loses the back end
the toe
through Tower Turn as Thomas Berlin has to stop on track, and it's a mistake from Philip Spess that's going to bring that battle to an end very prematurely. 22 minutes left in this race, and Christoph Zander looks like he's going to hold on to 4th place in this one. What a battle.
I don't know if it's going to be super visible right up until we actually get any lighting on the car, but that left side tire is actually towed out quite a lot, which is why we saw in the right corner on that right turn that the car just gave out like nothing was left in it. That tow out is going to be a significant factor for the handling characteristics of that car. It's going to be incredibly hot on the front left corner. And we should be able to see here a little bit of tow out, a little bit of camber damage. Actually, a lot of damage. Look at that. That is pushed in.
And the fact that he was able to get up onto the back of his teammate still with that much damage, I don't think he's going to take any repairs in this stop. It's the second stop for both cars. We're going to get a replay of that incident. You can see Xander on the outside of the McLaren, Spess on the inside. Big snap of oversteer for Xander.
Oh,
it might have been a
netcode.
bit of netcode on that one, which I think is why it looked like an avoidance for Spess. And goodness gracious me, if we haven't seen that incident before. Do you remember only 18 short months ago, Acura versus Porsche? The Acura ended up off the track and ended up both Porsches out of the race in the last hour of the event. As here is that spin from Spess, as I think both of these cars have come down pit lane to give Spess a chance to get back out there and continue that fight. So Writer Engineering committed to putting on a show for us, as both cars still sat stationary in pit lane, not really under much threat from anyone else out there on track, as Jeremy DeBova about a minute and a half behind. Back in the LMP2 field though, there is a fight for position that has closed up quite a bit in the last few laps or so. Thomas Berlin leads train from P4 down to P7. 3 cars, 4 cars even, pretty much nose to tail. Berlin, Dieter, Miller, Dennis, all involved in that one. A couple of these cars already having taken their final stop. Well, actually, Dennis, the only car to have taken his final stop of the race. I think these guys looking to go at least a little bit longer, and it's going to be marginal as to whether or not they'll get to the end of this race. Dieter moving to the inside, looking for a way past Berlin down into turn 1, as he almost runs into the back end of the LMP2 in front. Berlin checking up a touch on exit, might create an opportunity for Dieter, as you've got Miller and Dennis going at it in the background as well. Dennis going for a very late move into turn 3, isn't going to make it happen. Miller will hold on to that one, as the gap in the fight for P4 stays relatively stable through the slow and twisty stuff. Dieter on the grass trying to get the shortest run through Big Bend possible, as eyes just behind a little bit. It's Dimitri Dennis still looking to try and get into that clean air just in front of the TMR driver of Alex Miller. The opportunity ain't going to present itself down there into the hairpin, as we are struggling to try and follow 2 fights on track at once. Berlin and Dieter just spreading out a little bit more, but Dieter certainly looking the stronger of the 2 as he closes up under braking yet again. But Dennis right on the tail of Miller down into turn 10. Into Tower Corner they go. Dennis very much with the advantage as it stands. Maybe they're not taking a tire change at the last stop, so that fuel weight certainly going to be weighing him down. But Dennis has pretty much been the stronger driver for the entire race so far, and perhaps getting a little bit frustrated behind Alex Miller as they come down into Le Mans yet again. Both cars very wide onto the old runway of this circuit, onto the Allman Straight. They both go. The fight in front a lot closer than the one we're watching right now. A couple of different lines you can choose from into Sunset Bend. Is Alex Dieter going to take advantage of a shorter line? He's not. Both cars very wide, tucking it down to the inside, focusing on that exit. Gap comes down to a 10th. Dieter with a great exit from turn 17. This could be the opportunity he's looking for. To the outside goes Dieter. The fight behind closes up again. Berlin moves over to defend. Dieter not going for it into 1. Same in the fight behind. Dennis is going to hold on for now, as well as perhaps both of these drivers just waiting for a chance down into turn 7.
Jeez, absolute slugfest in GT3 for about a lap and a half. And now we've got 2 battles happening in LMP2, right in front of and behind each other. Not quite yet a slugfest, but surely to turn into one, should they choose to let it.
I might add. So those gaps remaining relatively stable. Yeah, again, methinks a little bit of strategy games going on down here, as Dieter perhaps he's not on the bubble in terms of getting to this race on the rest of this tank. Someone who is, though, is Alex Miller, 1.4 seconds behind Alex Dieter, who's been quicker than Dieter over the last few laps on average. So looking for a chance to get back into that slipstream and save a lot more fuel. Again, the driver in the number 41 car on the bubble for the fuel save, but 2 cars that aren't on the bubble for that fuel save are the 2 twin-turn sim racing cars. Renee Thalasinas on board that car for Dominic Isenberg, 40 seconds off the race lead, And you can see how much time a pit stop loses here. Dimitri Dennis was leading this race and is now stuck behind the fight for P4, 5, and involved in the fight for P6. So this is giving a great chance, not only for Nelson Clemente to gain some free time on Dennis, he was about 10 seconds behind before the pit stop, but for Renee Thalassinos and Sebastian Isenberg to just get some free lap time on Dimitri Dennis and make that 2-stop just a little bit easier. 1 stop even. What am I talking about? So here's that fight still. Dennis just seeming to run out of steam in this fight with Miller, although Miller had not a great exit from turn 5, and it might leave him vulnerable down into the hairpin. Dennis closes, dives down the inside. Side by side they are into turn 7. Miller trying to cut back on exit as they almost touch at the apex of the hairpin, and just like that, Dennis moves up into P6, and he's going to have a load of clean air out in front of him to try and make up some time on the twin-turn sim racing cars on Nelson Clemente. The gap between him and Renee Thalassinos with 15 minutes left in this race is 10 seconds. Keep an eye on that gap as this race continues. Berlin, Dieter, both owing us another pit stop. So before long, those 2 cars are both going to be out of the way of Dimitri Dennis, and it is going to be the chase on for Dennis to retake the lead of this race. 15 minutes to go. We still don't know who's going to win, but Dennis very wide through again to Bien. He's going to have a slowdown to serve on the exit of Le Mans. He might sensibly pull off to the side to try and clear that one, or he may try and clear it through Sunset Bend. We'll see what his speed is compared to the cars in front and behind him. Into 17 he goes. It's not a very quick line, so maybe trying to bleed off. Yeah, trying to bleed off that slowdown now as Miller gets back within 0.6 of a second. So Dennis just giving himself a little bit less time to close in on Isenberg and Thalassinos. That 1-stop strategy looking really strong right now as we are still waiting for the final pit stop of Nelson Clemente and Thomas Berlin and Alex Dieter.
Speaking of, Nelson Clemente currently holding on to the lead. We've got, about 15 minutes left. Thereabouts, somewhere in there. But Nelson Clemente currently holding that position this current time. Meanwhile, behind a pretty significant distance, actually, is Renee Thalassinos, who took over from Dominic Eisenberg, making his way through some lap traffic. We've seen some truly remarkable racing today from the LMP2 and GT3 classes. Philip Spess, speaking of which, and Christoph Zander, I don't believe have re-entered the track, so...
And I don't believe they will.
They will be.
That may be a retirement for both cars.
Yeah, yet another retirement, unfortunately, for this race.
Clemente then only a couple of laps away, or maybe even 1 lap away from his final stop of the race. We'll see where he comes out relative to the rest of the field. As Alex Dieter finally less than 1/10 of a second behind Berlin, looking very aggressive to the inside. Both cars move right at exactly the same time. Dieter on the attack, Berlin on the defense. Not even a... there's no question that that wasn't a reactive move, as Berlin is going to almost go big sends on GT3 race leader Miguel Almeida, who nailed his pit stop. It's going to keep these two really close. Dieter just needs to focus on that corner exit to make sure he gets a run on Berlin down into turn 7. Stays to the inside of the corner, getting as tight a run as possible. Berlin switches to the inside, back to the outside, Dieter to the inside. Can't get it down the inside on the brakes, as Berlin will hold on to P4 for now, as Dieter still looking for a way past, despite owning as a pit stop. Clemente then looking to make that hard right down pit lane, and does. Onto the pit lane speed limiter. It is a question of what is the gap between him and Dimitri Dennis on pit exit. Dennis, of course, was held up by Alex Miller for a good number of laps in the early phase of his stint and maybe took the best out of his tires. We can see them now. Alex Deiter just on that back stretch on the run down to Bien Le Mans and the Allman Straight. Commentator to a stop. The fuel going on board. It only needs to be about 10 minutes or so of fuel, but he is looking backwards at the gap to René Thalasinos and Sebastian Isenberg as it very slowly ticks down. Just going to tick under 10 seconds as he rejoins the circuit and isn't only going to be in front of René Thalasinos and Sebastian Isenberg on the one stop. It's going to be 16 seconds clear of Dimitri Dennis. So that early stop for Dennis has really hampered him. So that call to take a little bit less fuel in the first stop has cost him massively in the final stint of this one.
Unfortunately, the fuel strategy has been a very dicey selection of strategies throughout this season. You could either save both stints and try to keep it to one stop, or shorten it up and squeeze it into 2 stops. And if you are doing 2 stops, you need to figure out how much fuel you need. When do you need to make the stop? How long should you make the stop? As of right now, Nelson Clemente seems to have come out on top with this strategy, pitting very late into the race, getting enough fuel for a splash and dash with 10 minutes to go.
Clemente making an excellent call in this race in terms of strategy. Has had the pace to make this sort of call and come out on top in it. Thalasinos and Isenberg also on a really strong strategy as well that's dragged them way up the field from deep in the pack into what's looking like it's going to be a relatively comfortable double podium for twin turn sim racing, as long as both of them can keep it on the road between the white lines where necessary and keep those cars out of the barriers, out of the pit lane. It should be a very strong result to end the season for these two, as Berlin still managing to hold off Deiter for now, as that fight looks to have died down just a little bit. But Dimitri Dennis closing onto the back of them, looking to get involved. And if these three start scrapping hard, it's going to bring Alex Miller back into the mix in this one too.
The number 14 of Jeremy DeBover, dealt with by the number 32 and the number 24, Sebastian Eisenberg and René Thalasinos, respectively. An absolutely incredible race we've had. 8 minutes left in this race. Only a few laps left. Under 50 laps will have been this race. And a significant portion of them have been very exciting indeed. Very few laps of doldrum and I wouldn't say mediocrity. That'd be insulting to the skill level of everybody on track, because we've seen some truly incredible battles here. But unfortunately, it seems as though the only 4 GT3 cars on track are the top 4, Miguel, Diogo, Maxime, and Jeremy. Meanwhile, the LMP2 club's all the way down to 8. All still on track, with the only DNF being unlucky Luke Tunison.
He's back out on track.
Oh, he's back out on track?
Yeah, he's out on track. He's had his 16 minutes of repairs, and he's out there. He's circulating, just waiting for everyone else to have an incident and make some free positions. And I'm here for it. I'm so here for it.
Yeah, well, good for him. Getting back out to finish the last race of the last race of the last race of the season. I got there.
If this was RLM, as Thomas Berlin and Alex Deiter come down pit lane, John Hindhoff and co, Jeremy Shaw would be thinking about who would have the spirit of the race, and I think it does go to Luke Turnison on this particular occasion, who after a massive wreck has come back out on track just to finish the last race of the season. So bravo to you. Also, I don't know why, but when you mentioned the 50 laps, it took me back to a time, back in time, as the wavy things come over the screen to demonstrate memory, where me and Lewis Woods were teammates. We raced a 6 hours of Sebring race here in the LMP1, and we forgot to do the tire change for when I got back in the car in the final stint. So I ended up doing 155 laps around Sebring on the same set of tires.
Holy.
Without a puncture, without them getting down to 0% wear. And I think I still managed to make up a couple of positions really late in the race as well. It was absolutely hilarious. Never again. Never again.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully you'll never do that again.
Horrible. No, like we should have just bitten the bullet and changed the tires. I don't know why we didn't, but whatever. It was funny. I wish there were clips of that. Although that was the before times. So I hope there's not clips of that.
The before times.
The before times. Before 2020, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Renee Thalassinos and Sebastian Isenberg then 0.2 of a second separates what should be a fight for P2. I'm sure there's an element of hold position here as both cars are just trying to make it to the end of the race. Speaking of cars that are trying to make it to the end of the race, I almost said Neil DeBacca, wrong driver. Alex Miller, 23 laps in his first stint, 21 laps in the current stint, with a struggling Dimitri Dennis in front, who just doesn't seem to have the life left in his tires. So there's still a question mark over whether or not Miller can make it to the end of this race. In theory, he's only got this last lap of fuel left before he has to come and take a splash and dash that will marginally, I think, get him out in front of Berlin and Dieter, as it will be so much shorter than the splash and dash they took. So keep an eye on that as we tick past the last 5 minutes of this race. But he's done it properly. He's done a good amount of fuel saving in this final stint of the race, being in plenty of slipstream throughout it and having a good opportunity to do so here as well. It looks like he's not pushing too hard at all as Dennis goes deep again into 7, very much taking the best out of his tires at this stage of the race. Just needs to hold on if he wants to bring it home in 4th, but it is a far cry from where he was in the middle phase of this race. Up there in the lead by 10 seconds, but that slightly shorter second stint putting him well within other LMP2 battles out there on track, and just lost so much time, not only because of the extra fuel he had to take on board, but being involved in that battle with Alex Miller, who he did eventually overcome a few laps ago, but he just hasn't been quick enough to try and recover a podium place out of this race, as he's 17 seconds off the back of Sebastian Isenberg and 17 seconds off the back of Renee Thalassinos as well. That is a gap that was as small as 10 seconds only 7 or so laps ago at this point.
So 3 minutes and change left to go.
And Miller pits.
Miller taking a splash and dash. So just about 3 laps or so left in this race. Alison Clemente still leading overall in the LMP2 car, followed by Renee Thalassinos and Sebastian Eisenberg in LMP2. The top 3 in GT3 is still Miguel Almeida, Diogo Teodoro, and Maxime Dumoulin. As this race starts ticking down, we're going to start seeing some of these drivers pushing harder, some of them saving fuel, some of them seeking to just stay where they are in place and defend, others looking to attack the drivers nearest them. The 2 drivers who are not likely to attack each other, at least not at this current moment, are the twin-turn sister cars, the number 32 and the number 23 of Sebastian Eisenberg and Renee Thalassinos, respectively. In twin-turn sim racing, Aurora is Eisenberg, and then X-Ray is Thalassinos.
I always love it when sim racing teams try and come up with a different way to differentiate the teams in the team list. We're quite boring. We just use numbers. We've got 41 through 44. But then every other team seems to have, I don't know, something like Aurora, X-Ray. Sometimes they use colors, or I think at one point, when I was at OCM Racing, we considered using chemical elements, and we were going to base it on what color that element burned. So we had the silver car, the red car, the blue car, and the green car. So they were all going to be like different. I think what was it? The blue car, which is my car, was going to be, what was it going to be? It was either nitrogen or magnesium. I don't quite remember. But I'm almost sad that we never went for that, because I feel like it would have been really cool.
That is incredibly nerdy in the best way possible.
I wasn't the chemist. The person who ran the LMP1 program was. So he is. He's not dead. He is a chemist he's got a degree in it and everything. It's really cool.
As opposed to a backyard chemist?
Yeah, let's go with that. So yeah, but everyone just seems to have cooler ways of differentiating the cars than us. And I just kind of wish that I could name all of them Taylor Mills Racing and then not worry about it. But unfortunately, when you're trying to choose the car in a list, it's really difficult to pick the teams out. So I need to figure out, like, I don't know, I feel like I need to figure out which is which and go from there. As Clemente then, on the final lap of the race, into Sunset Bend he comes, benefiting from a poor strategy call from Dimitri Dennis, and a crash from Luke Turnerson will be the third unique race winner in the PPS at the final round at Sebring. Congratulations, Nelson. What a run. And there's still the twin-turn sim racing cars on that one-stop strategy, making it work to score a double podium here at Sebring. Dimitri Dennis will cross the line next, bringing it home in P4, and then it will be Killian Claes, Thomas Berlin, and Alex Deiter and Alex Miller who will bring it home in the almost final running positions of LMP2. Here comes Killian Claes then, a very well-run race by him, getting involved in some good fights earlier on with the twin-turn guys, but the two-stop limiting his results. Thomas Berlin, I think, with a personal best finish this season, as Deiter crosses the line for Slippers Racing Team in P7. Alex Miller down the inside of Jeremy Debova on exit, brings his number 41 P217 home in P8 in class. But your GT3 race winner in 5 out of 7 events. Take a bow, Miguel Almeida. That was a dominant season.
Yet another win for Miguel Almeida in the GT3 class, but yet another new winner in LMP2 as Miguel celebrates with some donuts just out on the outer corner, as well as Diogo Teodoro. I think we just saw a GT3 flying into the concrete barrier just beyond. The two teammates now celebrating together for what was an absolutely stellar performance from the two drivers. Both nose to tail for pretty much the whole race. Didn't falter from that.
Yeah, because Diego Teodoro bringing it home in second. Maxime Dumoulin on the podium as well. Jeremy Debova brings it home in P4 with Spestander, Suto, Curtis Kranzer, and Brown in your retirements in GT3. Which means I've kind of skipped the program a little bit and we've gone to race results before we get there. But let's have a look at the LMP2 race results as we recap what has been a fantastic debut season for the Platinum Pilot Series. So then, in LMP2, it is a brand new race winner in the NGC by Rubis Gas entry, piloted by Nelson Clemente. Twin Turn Sim Racing bring it home in P2 with Renee Thalasinos and Dominic Isenberg on board that one. And following them very closely behind in formation over the start-finish line is the sister car with Sebastian Isenberg on board that one. Dimitri Dennis suffered from getting stuck in some traffic and a poor strategy call earlier on in the race that he just had to deal with, and brings it home in 4th, with Killian Claes and Thomas Berlin bringing it home in 5th and 6th. Alex Deiter will be the leader of the Alexes in P7, with Alex Miller bringing it home in 8th, just not able to make that one-stop strategy work. And 7 laps down, Luke Turnerson, who won in Indy, took pole position tonight here in Sebring, just wasn't quite able to finish the job after a crash on pit lane exit, brings it home in P9. And Amity, why don't you take us through the GT3 finishers?
So in the GT3, we had the Sonic Racing team driver of Miguel Almeida clinched the GT3 championship at Indy and has once again shown that dominance that he had been exemplifying in the earlier portions of this season, winning the race at Sebring from pole position. Diogo Teodoro in 2nd position, the teammate from Replica Racing in the similar livery. Maxime Dumoulin in the Simatoc Sensations number 44 McLaren finishing in 3rd, with Jeremy DeVover in the Vortex Black number 14 finishing in 4th. Philip Spess and Christoph Zander for Rider Engineering Esports, both having an absolutely phenomenal battle in the late stages of the race, but unfortunately ending in disaster with both cars DNFing as a result of damage, finishing in 5th and 6th respectively, but a respectable battle between the two of them. Awesome. Absolutely fantastic battle from the two of them. Afonso Sudo finishes in 7th in the 219 Ferrari, with Jan Curbs, Anthony Quaranta, and Henry Brown also DNFing 8th, 9th, and 10th respectively.
So after what ended up being a very dramatic final event, let's bring in who is equally the most dominant driver in the season compared to your LMP2 champion of Luke Smith, who wasn't here tonight, but your GT3 champion as of last race, and also GT3 race winner from Sebring. Welcome back, Miguel Almeida.
Hello, once again.
Well, what a race it was. It was control and domination from the start of that one. Teodoro giving you a little bit of trouble in the early phases of the race, but after that pit stop, you came out on track about 5 seconds clear of Teodoro and Dumoulin. How on earth did you make that one happen?
Actually, I was trying to help Diogo. The team name is different, but the team is the same, so I was trying to help him pull away from the driver in P3. I don't want to butcher his name, so driver in P3, that's his name from now on. But yeah, I wasn't expecting to have such a gap in the pits, and I was a bit afraid that I underfueled, but it all went well there. I just saved a bit more for 3 or 4 laps, and I was safe.
So just to reflect on the season a little bit, it has been, again, a dominant season, reflected by a dominant race. Did you think that you'd be this competitive out the gate, able to win 5 out of the 7 events and bring home the championship with 1 race to go?
Not really, especially after those 2 worst races in Mugello and Hockenheim, where I left a bit triggered from that last race. But yeah, the penultimate race went well, and this is the last one. Yeah, I said it was one of my favorite tracks, so if it didn't go well, I would be pretty sad about that. But yeah, it's a good way to finish the season for sure.
Good. Hopefully we will have a second season of PPS to bring you next year. What are your plans? What are the team's plans? What can we expect to see from Sonic Racing Team next year?
Yeah, so probably looking into doing PEC as well, but for PPS, PSS, I'll be back, yeah, probably as a single driver again. But let's see how the year goes as well.
So as always, if you've got anyone you want to shout out, now is your time to do it. We'll give you the floor.
Yeah, just the usual cliche, thanking the team for the support throughout the season.
Short, sweet, and simple. That's the way we like it. Well, congratulations once again on the race win. Congratulations again on the championship. Certainly, I'm sure you'll be hoping you can repeat it next season, but we will see you in the new year.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a nice Christmas.
You too. Happy New Year. So that was Miguel Almeida. Let's bring in then Nelson Clemente, who becomes our third unique race winner in LMP2. Technically in as many weeks, if you want to count it like that. Nelson, it looked a little bit tricky out there today. Luke Turnerson looked relatively dominant compared to the rest of the field, and then Dimitri Dennis with that pit stop call early in the race, and then kind of gifting you the win later on with the longer stop.
Yeah, it was a bit lucky because I thought when I make the first stop, I see the tires are new, brand new, with 83%, and I say, okay, no, I must put all the fuel and go till the end and make a small pit stop, and that was my lucky.
Yeah, the two-stop strategy on the one-stop, it looked like a bit of a toss-up out there today. What was it that really settled you on the two-stop, or had you not really decided until you started the race?
No. I decided 2 stops on the beginning of the race because, as you know, we don't have setups for this car yet, for this truck, and I run with a buzz line. And I don't have the pace to make the lift and make only 1 stop.
Yeah, and that's something we should touch on as well. Of course, we had basically a brand new car brought in for this season, which is far from anything anyone expected, I think. How have you adapted to the new tyre model, the new aero, the new power limit on this car?
That's the problem. Now we don't have power. that's the main problem with this car, because I make car racing 3 years ago, and normally I know where I put the gears and where I have to brake, and now it's completely different. Now the car only make 8,000 RPM and then make 8,600, I think. And for me, the big issues is the power of the car.
Yeah, as someone who's sat through, I think 3 almost complete reworks on a car, I think I can empathize massively on that one. But usually at the end, we'll give you a little bit of space to shout anyone out, thank anyone you want to. So we'll give you the floor, Nelson.
Okay, now everything is okay. I only thank to my sponsors, to the Rubis guys, and all the guys who will run with me. They are correctly, and I hope next year I'm in again.
Yeah, we hope to see you next year as well, Nelson. Congratulations on the race win, and we'll see you next year.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
So to finally reflect on the season, series organizer Liam Sullivan does want to say a few words. So we're going to, for the first time in the last 2 hours or so, shut up and listen.
Oh, sorry. Hello.
You missed the cue.
I missed the cue. But yeah, thank you guys for the whole season. It's been very kind of difficult to get this off the road. I know it's been tried before with this community, and this is the first time we've managed to get it off and going and have a competitive season. It's been difficult building up sign-ups. We started off well, it's tailed off a bit, but we put on 7, what I believe is 7 really exciting races, and it's encouraging when I have not even put the sign up form out to have about 80-85% of the drivers saying I can't wait for next season, or I want to get involved, or being engaged in what tracks are on next season, what's happening. And obviously we're doing that in partnership with eGP and what Robert's doing over there in the main endurance championship to coordinate what's the best route forward to have 2 competitive platinum sanctioned series going on. And I believe this has been the perfect start for this series, and it's only going to grow from here. And hopefully you guys have seen that and enjoyed commentating on it as well.
Well, of course, there are still a couple of questions in the air about Season 2. Not many details have been shared with us so far yet, but do you have anything about Season 2 that you can share with us today?
So following kind of the plan of scaling down on the AM class in the main endurance championship, the idea is for that to support over in this series to increase our GT numbers especially, and really try and make it a true pilot series where we're supporting the AM drivers and giving them an opportunity to really show what their ability to do, which kind of gets masked, we feel like, a bit in the endurance championship, but also not fully eliminating them from PEC. On the whole. Other thing is LMP2's here to stay. We've been kind of gobsmacked by the take-up of LMP2 from the offset, and the fact we are actually struggling for GT more than LMP2, especially a car that has kind of been phased out of iRacing due to the GTP incoming and the popularity of it. It's been quite refreshing to see and a bit different compared to what you traditionally see where LMP2 feels struggling also. But that's our main thing. Car class is saying the same. There will be an 8-race schedule next season, so one more than this. The community will vote for 5 of them 8 tracks, which again is we believe it's important to involve everyone who competed. And again, thank you to all the drivers and teams that took part. Honestly, it's been how clean it's been. Look, after the first race at Spa, I didn't have a single report. I didn't have to do any work after the race. It was amazing, and overall it's been so clean and a level of respect amongst all the drivers, which has been really nice to see, which I haven't seen in many other championships before, which gives us a really good ground going into season 2.
Well, we're very excited to see exactly what Season 2 has in store for us when we do eventually get there. It has been a pleasure, Liam. I hope you've enjoyed the season as much as we have, and we'll see you in the new year.
Yeah, thanks guys as well. You've done a brilliant job all season long. I know this championship was kind of sprung on very late and put together very last minute. I think we were round 2 into the main endurance championship, but again, we've been really happy with the broadcasting, and your enthusiasm in this series has been unmatched compared to what I've seen, especially me running stuff over in the IndyCar world. So yeah, hope for another successful season 2 and much more the same as this season.
All I'm saying is you put sports cars in front of me on good racetracks, like that's it. I'm happy.
You put IndyCars in front of me as well, along with sports cars, you make me happy.
Exactly. Thank you, Liam. We'll see you in, well, as I say, we'll see you in the new year.
Yep, thanks guys.
So that was, he's gone, he's back, he's gone. So that was Liam O'Sullivan then speaking on behalf of Platinum. But Amity, how do we reflect on what's been quite an up and down season? We've seen races of pure dominance from both Miguel Almeida and Luke Smith, who of course wasn't here tonight. But then we've seen those breakthrough races for the likes of Jan Kurbs, for the likes of Luke Turnison, and for the likes of Nelson Commentator to really show what those guys are capable of in this sort of series. Like, what do we take away from this, really?
I mean, ultimately, the standard of racing in this series really showed what was truly capable within the roster of Platinum Endurance Championship drivers. As Liam O'Sullivan mentioned, he wanted another place for the amateur drivers to be able to, be able to get their shot in the sun in a way of saying things. Aside from Luke Smith showing up with like 6,000 I rating, but we really saw a lot of drivers showing a lot of potential and a lot of skill on track. We saw them struggle as well with some of the mixed weather conditions that we had earlier on in the season, especially at Mosport. We saw a lot of people making a lot of big mistakes there on a very difficult track that is unforgiving in the wet. But perseverance seemed to be the name of the game here. Luke Smith persevered in the way that he does, just constantly showing up and dominating every race he entered. And Miguel Almeida had a bit of a struggle in the middle of the season, had a couple races that weren't ideal, that did not go the way he wanted, Mugello being one of them, as being the really sore spot in his season. But managed to bounce back and win the next couple races and clinch the championship a race before the finish of the season. So what what isn't, I don't know, what else is there that we can say aside from this was a fun series to commentate, a fun series to produce, a fun series to watch?
Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly. I think I was pleasantly surprised with how high the quality of racing was throughout the season. As I said to Liam, it's sports cars on track, and if you put that in front of me, I'm going to be happy. And it's certainly something that it's quite easy for me to get enthusiastic about. So, yeah, again, thank you to all the drivers for putting on a show for us over the last 7 races or so, and definitely over the last 90 minutes. But you said it yourself, like this season gave us a little bit of everything. It gave us that pure domination. It gave us those surprise winners. It threw changeable conditions in there as well. We had the dry to wet to dry at Canadian Tire. We had the fully wet Hockenheimring race, which has been one of my favorite circuits of all time ever, which was so much fun to see as well, and see different drivers really shine in different conditions. And I think that's one of the things that sports car racing is really good for, because of course we have the assistive traction control. The GT3s have the ABS that just helps make things a little bit easier in the trickier conditions, but at the end of the day, you still have to drive around that. You still have to get the cars through the corners. You still have to get them into them, out of them. And that's so tricky in wet weather conditions, in the changeable conditions, as the tires fall off, as you have to deal with traffic, because you have to get your car placement absolutely perfect. And I think that's what's so interesting about the 90-minute races as well, because it's much more of a sprint race than the endurance stuff. It doesn't really matter where you qualify in the PEC. It only matters how well you run your race in the main event. We've seen that so many times already this year. And what a pleasure it's been, though, to sit and talk about race cars for the amount of time that we've been able to do it over the last 12 months. And it's almost sad to say that is the last bit for sports car racing on ABN this year. I've been so proud to help put a voice to that series. Thank you, Amity, for being alongside in the booth to produce this fantastic series and put on a brilliant broadcast week on week on week. I know we've had some difficulties with it, but I think it's safe to say we've put on a pretty good show for all of it. But yeah, that's also... It's almost going to be it for ABN for the year. There is a charity race that may be going on towards the end of the year. Keep an eye out for that. But apart from that, we are pretty much done for 2024. And like I say, it has been an absolute pleasure to lend my voice to ABN, lend my voice to IndyCar sports cars. And what a year it's been for both of those styles of racing here on ABN. But ABN will be back Friday the 3rd of January. Mark your calendars, 8 p.m. Eastern. The Winstall 400 qualifying will be our first event of the year. It is safe to say that operationally we are all really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great event, as it always is. But for the last time this season and for the last time this year, my name is Taylor Mills. Amity Pulsatrix has been sat alongside me in the booth. It has been so much fun to shout about race cars for the last 12 months, and we will see you in the new year. Happy holidays.